Well, here we are again. I've been quiet for far too long for no good reason, and it's high time my uploads didn't have entire trips around the sun between them. And what better way to kick things back into high gear than with the series that became the unexpected cornerstone of my little channel. I'll get to you one day, Dragon Quest V, but for now, it's time to revisit some classics. There we go. Huh? I already hit... Wait, what is happening? What happened to me? And is this... I have a house? Yes! No longer am I confined to the dark void. I need to thank my artist. Thanks so much for the... What? You prefer to remain anonymous for now? But this house is so sweet, Alright, fine. Everyone give it up for Anonymous Artist Lady! Awesome! Now I can do this video so much better justice. Man, we're sure in remake season with Dragon Quest right now, between the HD2D games and this welcome surprise. But first, let's go back to where it all started. On May 26th, 2021, Dragon Quest was celebrating its 35th anniversary with a livestream event that brought a whole new wave of announcements. These ranged from boring to infuriating to aw yeah! But the best announcement that we actually got gameplay footage for was the reveal of Dragon Quest III HD2D, the latest entry in the fascinating little subgenre that Octopath Traveler pioneered. The game was developed by Erdrick, a well-experienced corporation that previously got its foot in the HD2D door with Triangle Strategy. It was set for a simultaneous worldwide release, unlike another game I could mention, and even brought with it the tantalizing announcement that the first two Dragon Quest games were slated to get the same treatment as well. And with excitement running high, Dragon Quest fans the world over were then treated to about 3 years of absolute radio silence. Seriously, there was nothing! Not the slightest scrap of new information until June of 2024. I get that they announced these when they did for the anniversary, but I really wish they could have just held off until the games were closer to completion, because those 3 years were kind of agonizing. But finally, the silence was broken on the June 18th Nintendo Direct, where DQ3 got more footage, an actual release date, and the confirmation that the rest of the trilogy would be following sometime afterwards. And fortunately, we didn't have to wait as long for information on these two, as they got a proper reveal in a March 2025 Direct, and were later confirmed to have a release in October of that year. And now here we are, with the full HD2D Erdrick trilogy finally in our hands, along with yet another excellent remake to ease us through the pain of somehow still not having any information on Dragon Quest XII. As you've probably noticed, these were released out of order, but it does make sense considering that 3 was a prequel to the other two, which was actually supposed to be a surprise originally, but I guess trying to preserve that twist is a lost cause in this day and age. And as you also might know, these aren't the first times that any of these 3 games got remakes either. These ones never made it out of Japan, these ones did fortunately, and these ones were somehow the only versions available on modern platforms for the longest time, except for the Switch versions that were basically the same thing. But these aren't what we're here for today. It's time to see what the HD2D iterations bring to the table. And to be clear, I don't plan to retread the basics. I'm assuming you've either seen my previous videos on the topic or just already know your stuff. We're here for the new content today. Boy, these games look good! Square's HD2D look is one I liked a fair amount previously, but some things like the lighting and somewhat drab color palette did take it down a notch or two for me. But here, man, whatever Erdrick did to the presentation absolutely hooked me. And this is the standard I'm holding the HD2D style up to now. Audio presentation is great across the board here too, from the orchestrated soundtrack to the new voice acting to the little details like hearing water flowing in the fountains. But the presentation speaks for itself. What else is new here? Let's start with this guy. Plot-wise, it's pretty much the exact same as it was before, just with nicer presentation. A few new scenes here and there to fill things out a bit, but it's still the same classic tale of following in Ortega's footsteps. But speaking of him, he's the only one to have anything really new story-wise. I'm glad to see that they kept the SNES prologue that the mobile version skipped out on, but you also get a bunch of additional flashbacks that flesh out Ortega's journey in some nice new ways. But aside from that, yeah, it's basically the same old story with a nice facelift, and that's all it really needed to be. Onward to the gameplay. One of the things I was the most curious about was how the game would handle exploration. The Erdrick trilogy is well regarded for the amount of player freedom it affords, and I was slightly worried that this new version might railroad it a bit too much, but I like how it's handled here. The game does point a few more fingers in the direction you should be going, but it doesn't outright tell you where to go. Thus, the core elements of investigative exploration are still very much intact, though you can turn on map markers if you're having trouble. While out exploring in any of these three games, you'll notice these sparkly spots. These have stray items in them, so pick them up. You're not going to find anything crazy in them, but they make for some good pocket stuffers. More substantially, there are the secret spots. These are rarer, so keep your eyes peeled for any odd-looking landmarks. The items you find here are much more impressive, but the main thing you'll be searching them for in DQ3 is the new friendly monsters. Across the entire game, you'll find friendly monsters that can be added to Monty's Monster Menagerie. Don't get too excited, you can't enlist them as full party members like in DQ5, but you can enter them into the new monster arenas you find all across the towns. If you've played DQ8, you'll know what to expect here. Form a team of your best monsters and hope they can take the title. You'll need to find better and better monsters to keep up with the stronger tournaments, and that's where the new character class comes in. Monster Wranglers. These fellows are good at tracking down monsters and preventing skittish monsters from running when they see you. They also learn new battle skills depending on how many monsters you've recruited, so you might want to add one to your team if you plan to take the monster tournament seriously. You don't strictly need to participate in the new monster content, but there are good rewards to be had, so it's worth your time. As for the combat itself, it's mostly the same as before, but with new additions that bring it up to the modern code across the whole HD2D trilogy. There are adjustable combat speeds and a more intelligent AI for the tactics auto-battling, which really cuts down on the grind a lot. Difficulty-wise, the games are a bit easier than the older versions, but there are freely adjustable difficulty options too. So feel free to pick Draconian if you want a whooping like the old days. Then there's all the new combat assets. Abilities are the big one, since the originals didn't have them at all. But then there's new spells, new items, and some new safety nets. Game overs don't get you kicked back to your last save point with half your money this time. It's an option, but why do that when you can reload from the last autosave, or just have a rematch if you were fighting a boss, of which there are some new ones this time. Alright, what else? The party members are more customizable now. You can change their appearance and select their voice, since they do have voice lines in battle, though not anywhere else. Yes, they're still completely blank slates that the other characters don't even seem to notice, but they're at least somewhat livelier blank slates. Next, oh right, where is Treasures and Trapdoors? The SNES and Game Boy versions added it as a neat little board game you could play, but the mobile, and thus also the Switch versions, axed it. I expected it to be back this time, but no dice. I mean, I've played it elsewhere by now, but I still think it should have been here. Yeah, there's not really much in the way of brand new, never-before-seen content in this version, really. There is one new dungeon in the post-game, but nothing for the main adventure. To be fair, the game had so much of a facelift that most of these areas feel new, but yeah. It's basically the same game. But the more I think about it, this is honestly a compliment. It reflects very well on the original game that all it really needed was a fresh coat of paint, a few modernizing touch-ups, and a sprinkling of new content to get it ready for the current day. I'd personally say that this is the best version of the game, and that it still holds its value exceptionally well today, which is quite an award to give to a game that came out in 1988. I wouldn't have minded a bit more new stuff, don't get me wrong, but it still feels like a full package regardless. But on the topic of remakes that got plenty of new content, yeah, I won't lie. This right here is the real reason I decided to make this video. Even as far back as the initial tease that these two would also be getting the remake treatment, they were the ones that interested me more. Why? Well, put simply, because they were the ones that needed it. Dragon Quest I and II are games that I'm glad I played, but also games that I don't see myself replaying. I was delighted to learn about these vital pieces of RPG history and enjoyed them for what they were, but the blunt truth of it is that time hasn't been the kindest to these two. And of course, context is everything. Both of these games came out before Final Fantasy was even a thing, and they were very busy laying down the groundwork for an entire genre to follow. Given the environment that they released in, I think these games are honestly good for their time, but they're a hard sell now, unless you already have a vested interest in the series like I did. And that's what made the idea of a full, from-the-ground-up remake so exciting. They had remakes before, yes, and ones that bundled the two games together at that, but those ones basically just polished up the existing wheel rather than reinventing it. So now, with the prospect of a fresh start in front of them, can new life be breathed into the time-honored classics that defined the... Okay, cut the nonsense, yes! These remakes are phenomenal! I was looking forward to this one the most out of the three, partly because of the original's simplicity, but also because of its truly unique feel. How would it be improved? What would be added? And, crucially, how would a modernized Dragon Quest I handle the only game in the series with one playable character? Let's begin with the plot, because the way it changed is really interesting. At its core, the plot is very much the same, with the encroaching threat of the Dragon Lord and the hero's journey to set things right, but man, DQ3 added a new scene here and there, but this time, it's a whole new retelling of the game's events. The first change is simple, but effective. This guy's a genuine menace now. Previously, the Dragon Lord's assault on Alefgard was just about all talk and no show. You never saw him do anything of note until the finale, but now? You walk into an Alefgard that he's just about conquered already. Tantagel's forces are scattered and desperate. Multiple towns have been annihilated this time, as opposed to just one, and the Dragon Lord's forces actively rack up a body count as the game goes on. The world, a lot more than last time, needs a hero, and the way you're introduced is a lot more interesting. Previously, the game confirms your identity with the first line spoken. You're the scion of the legendary Erdrick, without any doubt. But this time, people are a lot more skeptical of your claim to the heroic lineage. After all, you don't really have any proof of your ancestry, so how will you convince the world that you are who you say you are? By getting out there and heroing so hard that they'll believe you, that's how. Now we get into the meat of the gameplay. You do indeed stay a solo act throughout this game, so how does the game handle this? Two ways, mostly. One, add way more enemy variety into the game and let them attack you in groups. And two, give the hero magical steroids. I know I mentioned earlier that this trilogy adds a lot of new moves to your arsenal, but man is it the most noticeable this time. He gets a crazy glow-up, abilities, spells, equipment, the works. The original game always had this neat one-man army versus the world feeling to it, but the combat was way too monotonous for me to fully enjoy it. Here, though, this guy's an entire RPG party in one. This is augmented a lot by a new addition that's actually a first for the entire series. Scrolls. It's quite simple. You find these scrolls all over the place, and each one has a new spell or ability for you to learn. These make for an excellent incentive to explore, because the powers you learn from these can be game changers. But, crucially, the Dragon Lord's army isn't making it easy for you either. I'm glad this game doesn't punish game overs very much, because that's certainly gonna happen to you. The game's not as tough as the original, though the Draconian difficulty is there if you want it to be. But even on normal difficulty, these monsters can hand your head to you if you're not careful, especially if you're in a boss fight. There are a lot of new bosses this time, and they're all forces to be reckoned with. With only one character at your disposal, these fights can be lethal struggles that really force you to use everything in your arsenal to its fullest. But pulling through these fights is super rewarding, and a fair test of your abilities. Except this guy. He was a total pain in battle and out of it. But even better, this game has plenty of brand new areas and plot details, which really isn't surprising given how little there was before, but I was still impressed with just how much there was. The new dungeons are a standout because, hoo boy, the dungeons in the original were less dungeons and more holes in the ground that were tedious, boring, and poorly lit. Here, though, there are not only a nice array of new dungeons, but the few that we had before got an overhaul. And, as you might expect, these new dungeons and areas tie into the brand new story beats. New scenarios with new characters, which is good because there were like 4 of them last time, but more importantly are the parts regarding the spirit of the land herself, Lady Rubis. The original trilogy gave some mention to this character, but she had remarkably little going on for a literal goddess who was supposedly very important. For that matter, I don't think Dragon Quest I mentioned her at all. This time, though, she has an entire new arc spanning all of these games involving her and a group of fairies that work for her. And she's a lot more closely tied to not only the destiny of the hero, but also to Princess Oh wait, there's voice acting now.
Princess Gwaelin is returned!
Gwaelin. Oh well, I almost got it last time. Previously, Gwaelin was barely involved in anything, to the point that rescuing her was completely optional. Different story here. She gets a lot more screen time, actual reasons for why she was captured in the first place, and even some new magical powers that aid you on your quest. You do have to save her now, which is good because boy, she's having a much worse captivity this time around. But on that note, let's list off a few more points here. Yes, you can still carry her around with you for the whole game if you like. Yes, you can still choose to ally with the Dragon Lord, but yes, the game still pretends that you didn't. But most importantly of all...
Say the line!
Gwaelin!
But thou must!
Yeah! 10 out of 10 remake. I could go on, but we've still got some ground to cover here, so let's cut to the chase. Dragon Quest I HD2D is an absolutely stellar touch-up of the original in just about every way imaginable. Crucially, it walks the delicate balance of both feeling like a brand new game at times, while also feeling exactly like the game I know. Everything that I remember liking about the original is still here, much better and bolstered by a healthy dose of novel additions. The story is still a very simple one, even after all the enhancements, but I really don't mind. The classical fairy tale vibes are immaculate here, and while that's true of the whole series, I feel like it's especially true of this game. I love these little illustrations that look like they came right out of a picture book, and simplistic as this story of heroic daring-do might be, it's got all the heart it needs to be a winner in my book. But now it's time to bid farewell to the hero and his royal bride, and jump ahead to those kingdoms that their children founded. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. This game is the HD2D Erdrick Trilogy's new star attraction, which is quite the accomplishment given what we started with. I said a lot of nice things about this game back in my review, and I will still happily go up to bat for it thanks to all the additions and improvements it made over the original. But still, man, this game was rough, and I actually have a better idea of why now. Something I didn't clue into is that Dragon Quest II had a very difficult development phase, mostly due to the devs underestimating how much time they needed, and thus locking themselves into a nasty deadline. A lot of content had to be cut, both due to technical limitations and crunch time, and crucially, they never had the time to playtest it properly. As the project neared completion, they realized that the difficulty was way too high and had to delay the game to balance things. That's right, the version we got that was infamous for its difficulty was the toned down version. But even with the delay, the devs didn't have enough time to revise the entire game, which explains the massive problems that Dragon Quest II had at the end. Even in the remakes I played that ironed out some of the problems, I could still feel the effects. All in all, Dragon Quest II was a game that, while still successful in Japan and a vital step forward for both its series and the genre, had its true potential stifled by a troubled and strained development. And that's why a true, from-the-ground-up remake was the best thing this game could have asked for. I'm not sure I can adequately portray just how much of a glow-up this game got, but I'll try. Once again, the core of the story is the same as before, with far better presentation, but so much of this game is either new or handled so much better that it honestly feels like a new game in the series. Let's start with one of the biggest improvements, the characters. Originally, these three had basically nothing going for them character-wise. Just one silent protagonist and two others that just barely weren't. Seriously, they had about 10 sentences of total dialogue, and most of those were optional. But now, with revamped story scenes, full voice acting, and loads of additional dialogue, they're characters, and not just characters, but good ones that interact, develop, and play off each other. Also, while you can name these two, they do actually have default names now, so we can finally stop calling them Monarch of Kingdom. Wait, who's this? Yup, you've got a brand new party member this time. Well, a new party member, but not strictly a new character. The Princess of Cannock did exist in the original, but despite actually asking for it, she never got to join your party.
Why not?
She's a scion of Erdrick, and Moonbrook got in, so why couldn't we have her too? Sure would have made the game a lot easier. Well, it's because the weakest member in the party was too embarrassed to have his kid sister along, I guess. Really, man? Between this and all the other stuff he put us through, I'm starting to think he was sabotaging us on purpose. But now Matilda finally got her chance to shine, and we've got 4 heroes in a row like Rubus intended. She tags along in the opening to help you find her brother, but then you don't see her again until after you unlock ship travel. I honestly recommend looking up a guide on how to recruit her as soon as possible, and even use the easy mode to cheat past this boss if you don't feel like grinding. Not my usual way of doing things, but you'll miss out on a whole bunch of scenes with her if you don't do this as soon as you can. And it's worth doing it, because Matilda's great. The original trio have the same, albeit upgraded skill sets as before, so what's she do? Well, she's mostly a mage, though with a side of martial artist and a sprinkling of gadabout. The team just feels so much more complete with her in it, both gameplay-wise and as characters, and honestly, this group went from one of the flattest parties in the whole series to legitimately one of my favorites. And everything else got improved too! New locations, new battles, and entirely new plot threads that the original game desperately needed. Alefgard deserves a special mention here. What could have been a really cool homecoming moment in the original was an unfortunate victim of technical limitations, resulting in a shrunken and super simplified Alefgard. This time, you get the real deal, and stuff actually happens in it. But the biggest surprise for me was the upgrade the villains got. The children of Hargan got the same treatment as the heroes. These three were originally just a set of unspeaking enemy recolors that you fought in the final dungeon with zero fanfare. But now, they're full-on antagonists with new battles, new backstories, and some actual personality. It says something that I didn't even recognize the names when their minions started talking about them, and it took me a while to remember that they were even there in the original. And to complete the package, there's a new antagonist that you face in the game's newest location, the Ocean Depths. Yeah, there's a whole new bit with mermaids and full-on undersea exploration that was nowhere to be seen in the original. It's not an entire new map's worth of content or anything, but it's still a substantial new addition with plenty to find and do. And running through all these new additions is the final improvement over the original's ideas in the sigils. Oh, the sigils. Originally, these were front-running contestants for the coveted title of most boring plot MacGuffins ever. Barely any story relevance, confusing to find at times, and rewarding you with nothing but a short chat with Rubus and the honor and privilege of entering the worst dungeon you've seen in your life. The remake, though? Whole new ballgame. Everything's fixed. Not only do these have actual presence within the plot, they're useful. Each one grants you helpful effects in battle, especially the Soul Sigil, that can power up certain moves into brand new techniques if you use them under the right circumstances. I love when the plot MacGuffins actually do things for you, and even better, the sigils have new lore that you participate in. Back in Dragon Quest I, there was a whole new quest where you helped Rubus's fairies create these things, and you could even use them there as well. And Dragon Quest II brings it all together in a big way. You went from pathetic to amazing sigils, but when it comes to Dragon Quest II HD2D's best additions, there's one that outshines all the rest. The new finale. Naturally, it's as spoiler-filled as they come, so here's where to skip to, and oh boy, I've been looking forward to talking about this. The ending initially plays out much the same as before. The usual fights with Hargon and Malroth happen, and by the way, I love that they let Malroth cast full heal exactly once, just to scare the veteran players. But after that, it's mostly the usual stuff, with the Middenhall coronation and celebratory credits. But then you unlock the epilogue. These three weren't the only villains to get a character upgrade. The Dragon Lord, and especially Hargon, got brand new backstories that they desperately needed considering the nothing that they had before. And the epilogue brings all of these new stories together in a big way as it opens the path to a new finale. After you finish the game again, something different happens. Malroth actually starts talking and drags you through a dark portal into this abyss. And then you start to learn why they picked Dragon Quest II as the trilogy's new finale. Rubus intervenes to shield you from harm, Ramia appears to carry you towards victory once again, and you penetrate the storm to find the darkness's true form, Malwrath. And this fight goes to some crazy places, easily one of my favorite battles in the whole series. And things aren't even over yet after this final foe is vanquished. As the heroes reflect on their completed quest, they all come to the conclusion that they just really enjoy adventuring and want to go on another one. And then they're afforded the opportunity to do just that. Ramia appears once again and bears the heroes heavenwards towards a dark portal. One detail that the remake trilogy really went out of its way to drive home is that Erdrick didn't get the happy ending he wanted. Recall that, as a final act of spite, Zoma sealed off the only way back home, robbing Erdrick of any chance he ever had of seeing his mother again. The original just kind of glosses this over, but the remake highlights just how much Erdrick wanted to go back home and never could. But now, with the darkness vanquished at its true source, Erdrick's descendants have a chance to see what their ancestor couldn't. Ramia penetrates the dark barrier and the heroes soon find themselves back where it all started, in the kingdom of Aliahan. You get to see the whole place and how it's changed over the years, but most importantly, the heroes learn about their forgotten heritage and even reunite with who I assume to be the lingering ghost of Erdrick's mother, who just wanted to see her hero come home again. And with that, the trilogy finally comes to a close. Man, what remakes these were! 3 was a delightful touch-up to an already solid foundation. 1 was a masterful expansion to the simple adventure that started it all. But 2, oh, 2! This was the sort of thing remakes were made for, propelling the series' black sheep to fantastic new heights. We really need more remakes of unfortunate games that failed to reach their potential, rather than games that everyone already liked. Though I really should hold up a second and address some of the problems I had, so here we go. I've touched on this before, but I really would have liked to see the first-person view in combat changed. The battles even start with this nice look at the characters before shifting back into first-person mode. Again, I understand that the first-person view is just kind of baked into classic Dragon Quest, to the point that removing it might be controversial, but for my money, I'd have liked to see a battle style that looked closer to, say, a Golden Sun game. Next, the lack of music variety really starts to be noticeable here. It made perfect sense back in the day for so many towns, locations, and battles to recycle each other's themes, but it kind of sticks out now. I really would have liked some more new music, or at least music from other games in the series. Though, now that I think on it, this is kind of just a criticism of Dragon Quest in general, because even 11 had a sparse selection of new music. Oh, and on the topic of audio, I really wish you could have given this guy some more lines to say when using support moves, because,
Thou shalt not escape! Thou shalt not escape! Thou shalt not escape! Thou shalt not escape!
On a similar note, I actually kind of wish they could have dropped the silent protagonist thing for him. All the others have so much more personality now that I wish Middenhall could have talked with them too, or at least had battle lines. Why not? You let him talk a bit. Oh well, he did get a little more character at least. Finally, Dragon Quest, could you fix the zoom spell? I wish you could just select the location you want to fly to on the map, instead of having to go down a list until you finally get it. But yeah, aside from that, outstanding stuff all around. And, could we possibly get another trilogy remade, please? Come on, you made a few nods towards Zenithia already. I'm spoiled, okay? 4 remakes isn't enough. Remake the whole series, especially 9. But on one final note, if you still weren't sold on Dragon Quest II's remake, I have a monumental piece of news to share. They fixed the cave to Erdrick! Oh, look at that clearly marked pitfalls that you can actually walk around this time. Modern technology is truly miraculous. And even more astounding, they made this little goober actually strong. Crazy, I know, but he's finally done it.